have always found it challenging to call myself an artist, and to be honest, that thought actually stopped me from even trying. And I have noticed that many others feel the same way. But why do we feel that way though? Hello and welcome to another episode of The Fifth Floor, a podcast about creativity, art and photography. My name is Athina and I am your host. So, in our introductory episode, I mentioned that we would eventually dig a little bit deeper into this idea of when we can call ourselves artists and why for some of us it's really difficult to do so. And I guess now is the moment to do that. So, let's dive in. Personally, I have always found it challenging to call myself an artist, and to be honest, that thought actually stopped me from even trying. And I have noticed that many others feel the same way. But why do we feel that way though? Is it imposter syndrome? Do we feel less than others? Is it lack of formal education? Lack of external validation? Self-doubt? Am I good enough? Am I good at all? Probably all of the above, and many more. I think for me, it was primarily the fact that this is not my profession. I had this thought embedded in me that you need to get like a formal 4-year degree to call yourself anything. Anyway, then it was about the fact that I'm not taking photographs every day and that I have discovered that this is something that I can actually do regardless of whether I get paid for it or not much later in life. I can just do it because it helps me to survive. I don't even have to be good at it, if that makes any sense. But you know what I understood at some point, and it kind of unlocked something in my brain and unfroze me in a lot of ways. Art is something you make. So, if you make art, you are an artist. Full stop. So let me say it again. Art is something you make. So, if you make art, you are an artist. Mind-blowing, right? But it is that simple. We don't need anyone's permission to call ourselves artists. I have recently read something that Faith Ringgold said. She said, "You can't sit around and wait for somebody to say who you are. You need to write it and paint it and do it." And she's totally right. Art is something that you do primarily for you. It is your way to express yourself and your ideas, to comment on things, to survive on this planet. So if calling yourself an artist is something that holds you back from making and creating, know that you are an artist just by making and creating. And obviously, I'm not saying not to seek for the recognition or to make art for a living if that is what you want. I wouldn't be making this podcast trying to get myself out there if I didn't want that. But what I'm saying is, don't block yourself by not being able to form the sentence, "I am an artist." Know that even if no one ever sees your art, if you make art, you are an artist, and that's something worth celebrating. And just to wrap things up, I would like to give you some examples of artists, photographers that you may know and that they either didn't have formal education in art or they have started later in life. So the first one is Diane Arbus. She was known for portraits of people on the marches of society, like circus performance, trans people, eccentrics. She took some photography classes, but she never earned a degree. And now she's one of the most influential portrait photographers of the 20th century. Her work redefined beauty and normalcy. Then we have Vivian Maier. She was known for her street photography, especially of Chicago and New York in the mid-20th century. She worked as a nanny, and her immense body of work of over 150,000 negatives was discovered posthumously. She is now considered one of the greatest street photographers of the 20th century, and she was entirely self-taught. Then we have Brandon Stanton. You may know him as Humans of New York, which is probably the first photo book I have ever bought. He's known for street portraits and stories of everyday people. He is a former bond trader, self-taught in photography after being laid off, and he created one of the most emotionally resonant storytelling projects on the internet. Then we have Frida Kahlo, who studied medicine before turning to painting after a severe back accident. And finally, Jean-Michel Basquiat. He was born in Brooklyn, New York, to a Haitian father and a Puerto Rican mother. He never received a formal art degree. He dropped out of high school and began as a graffiti artist, tagging under the name Samo, and he educated himself just by visiting museums, reading extensively, and immersing in New York City's cultural underground. And so, if these stories are not inspiring, then I don't know what is. And believe me, these are only a few artists from a long, long list. Okay, so just do me a favor now and say it out loud. I am an artist, and I promise everything will become a little bit better. And before you go, never forget in your life that we have a new podcast every Wednesday. To visit Fifth Floor and subscribe to our newsletter to get updates, follow us on Spotify and share if you liked and leave a review. If you're listening via YouTube, please subscribe and share any topics you wish us to discuss or to expand on more. Okay, bye for now and thank you for being here. See you on the next one.